on to the next talk. Thank you very much, Hans. It was a really an interesting one. This one needs to be on. So, who in here cares about code quality? Yeah, that is nice. Even though a lot of us care about it, it's one of the most neglected things in a lot of projects. My name is Sara Larsson. I'm a software architect and software engineer at CGI, working for various clients where I have this problem a lot. So I want to share with you my approach to trying to solve this, and maybe we can make sure we get better code quality together. So even though it's kind of, at least for me as a developer, kind of pride to write good quality code, that it's clean, readable, good performant, it's sometimes really difficult, especially not always the priority. Maybe the product owner just don't get it. Whenever you want to do a technical dev story in your sprint, it's always scrapped because a new feature is more fun for them. Maybe even in the developer team, you're not on the same line. Maybe you have different visions or different approaches. And maybe you also just don't know what you're missing. Maybe, or you go to a conference, you learn that you're probably neglecting the performance of your application because you're not using the Visual Studio Profiler 4 times a day. And you just want to make better, and you want to learn and use the new things you have gained. So a little bit, what is then code quality? Code quality is a lot of different things, but in the end, it helps make our code better in various ways. It makes it more efficient, more reliable, more robust, more performant, it's testable. So in the end, it runs better. It's cleaner, can help onboard new people in your project faster. So in the end, it solves a lot of headaches we might have at the projects. So it should be a priority for the projects, because it does not only give the developers more value, it also gives the project a whole more value. No one wants to see regression in their team or in the project. We've had a talk a lot with our product owner where he's really disappointed whenever something stops working that worked just the previous sprint. Yeah, then you know that your code is not tested enough and you need to work on those aspects. So I want to go through a couple of different tools that can help make code quality more visible, because that is one of the problems, that it can be a very abstract thing if you're only talking about the code itself. Especially for someone that isn't a developer, yeah, why should they care? What are they actually caring about? With these 3 tools, we can make it a little bit more visual and also measure our code quality. So SonarQube and Menbolt is something we can use to measure the code quality, while Azure DevOps is a very good platform to track it and have it as a point of discussion. So starting with SonarQube, what is it? It is a code analyzer that looks at various aspects of your code and reports a bit, what the performance and the quality of your code is. This is a project I started and have finished. I was part of the team almost all the way to the end, and I'm really proud of the state of it, but I don't think you should expect a lot of projects to look like this, sadly. But you see, you have various information here. For example, you can see that we now have our security hotspot, which means that at least as a team, we should look at what is this and do we need to take an action to solve this. Same with code coverage, duplication, code smells. You don't have to solve it all, but you should at least be aware of the current status. And this is the overview, and you can also dive deeper to get exact information about it. So if we follow this security hotspot, we get information about exactly where in the code it is, what the issue is, and sometimes even suggestions on how to solve it. Similar with our code coverage. Here we can also dive into the code to see exactly where in our code the coverage is or where the coverage is missing, so we know where we need to focus on. Menbolt also analyzes our code, but it looks more at dependency management, because nowadays, if you're developing code, if you're not using any third-party dependencies and libraries, you're probably doing a lot more work than you have to. So Menbolt analyzes our code. It lists all our dependencies and also sees if there is a risk with any of these. So similar to SonarQube, it also reasons about what it is and how we can solve it. In this case, our JSON library is out of date, and Menbolt suggests that we should update it. So in that way, it's very easy, but at least you get a very clear overview of what your libraries are and if there are any risks. And it can also just help to evaluate what are we using, and maybe we have installed a lot of stuff that aren't actually used in the end that we can clean up. So this gives us, especially as developers, more insight of what does our code look like, where are points we need to focus. And then we can use Azure DevOps both to integrate these tools with our code, but also to help share this information with the product owner. Starting a bit with how to use it. So if you have your code in Azure, you might have already pipelines running over your code to build it. Here you can directly integrate these tools, and if you're making a pipeline, you have some building blocks in the tasks here on the side, where there are already code snippets that integrates these tools into your pipeline. So in that way, Azure also helps to set this up. And all these tools do have a free trial version. If you want to use it commercially, you might have to look into a licensing fee, but at least you can start trying out yourself, which is really nice. So we can tie this into our pipelines. And at least as a development team, we can already start guarding our code a little bit. So if we have Sonar tied into our pipelines, we can also tie it into our pull requests. Because in the end, the easiest way to make sure that we have good quality code is to not merge bad quality code. And that we can do as developers when we review our code, that we make sure that we are following the guidelines we want and find important, and together make sure that we're only merging code we are happy with. So here in Sonar, in Azure, you can then set up pull requests to have gates with what requirements do you need to actually merge your code. In our case, we have that we need to resolve all the comments. At least one other person needs to have reviewed it. And as an optional one, we also say that we want our code coverage to be at least 80%. We have said it's not a mandatory one because sometimes your code coverage will not be up to standard and there might be a reasoning about it. But Sonar will then leave a comment on our pull request saying, hey, the code coverage is lower than what we want, and then you can also respond to that saying, oh, it is for reason A, B, C, so in this case it's okay, or you know that you need to solve it. So we now have a way of involving the development team and making sure we are up to date with our code. So how do you involve the rest of the people that aren't the developers, the Scrum Masters, product owners, product manager, stakeholders? What I have noticed is that they really get happy if they get numbers and see what we are working with. They can see graphs going up or down, that they actually have something to measure. So Azure can help us with that. One example is to track your sprint. I think nowadays it's very standard that we're working with Scrum and sprints. So what I've done is I've color-coded our backlogs. We have different type of product items that we're working with. So we have the green ones that are, the fun new features that makes the product owner really happy. The yellow ones is more design, research, architecture, black refactor, and red bugs. And every sprint, we look at what were our distribution this sprint. If you see that we're only doing green items, we do have a case to argue with the Scrum Master and product owner saying, hey, we are only doing the green items, which means we are neglecting our code. And if we keep doing this in the long run, we will have a lot of headaches with our code. And because we make this visual and also be able to look back from the previous sprints, we can argue with them that other type of stories, not only the new features are important as well. And in that way, we can also then work with Sonar to keep our code coverage and code smells, etc., going up. As I mentioned, you're not going to start out, or if you're starting with a completely new project, it's maybe easier to strive for high code quality, but especially if you're coming into a project later, or it's a long-running project, these numbers might look worse. And it's no point of aiming to have 80% code coverage if you're starting at 10. Then instead, take the agile mindset and think, okay, we want to improve this, and every sprint we want to improve it by 5%. Then you can also take this into account with the team and move slowly forward towards a better code quality. Because no product owner is gonna agree with you saying, we're dropping everything this sprint and we're only gonna write unit tests. Because for them, they see very little value, even though in the long run, it might add a lot for the application. But if you say, we want just a small sliver of the sprints, we can keep improving our tests, because it will create value in a long run, because we will have a more stable application, then it is easier to argue with the non-developers. Because in the end, code quality is a team effort. Sadly, as developers, we don't always have the power to decide what ends up in the sprint. We need to work together with the whole team, also the non-developers, to make sure we have the time and priority to guard our code and make sure that we keep the quality high. And in the end, the headache is all our own. If we, years down the road, completely neglected this and we have someone new getting on board on the team, the product owner is also not going to be happy that it takes them half a year to even understand what the code does. But if we have made sure that the code quality is good and it only takes them a month, that is a big difference that also impacts the other people around the team. And make sure as a development team that you're also aligned, because if you are together going to the product owner and telling them, we find this important, then they're more likely to listen than if that we are all saying different things, because then it's maybe difficult for them also to know what has a priority or not. So in short, make sure you align with the dev team. What are your goals? No one likes to be dictated over. It is nice if we can agree together what we are working towards to make sure that we are all having the same goals. Then it's easier to go the same direction. Set goals and targets. What are we working towards? And don't make the goals too high. Take small steps to see that you improve continuously. Analyze the current status. Find the bottlenecks. What would make the most impact at the moment? And make sure you involve the product owners, Scrum Masters, so that you can get the time you need to actually improve this. Thank you very much. I hope this will help you to improve your own code quality and have the time to do it. If you have any questions, want to discuss it later, you have my contact details here. And I would also be happy if you have any feedback to make this presentation better, then feel free to review my session. Thank you very much.